They called her Princess Pushy, said she was too tall, too bold, too foreign, and yet, when the banquets began and the diamonds came out, it was her silhouette that stole the room. Her tiara wasn't a crown, it was a message, and every jewel in her collection, a quiet defiance, a story of loss, of love, of legacy. Today, we step into the vault of the most controversial woman to marry into the British royal family, Princess Michael of Kent. And her jewels, well, they speak louder than words. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. She wasn't born into the British royal family, and when she married into it in 1978, not everyone was thrilled. A Catholic, a divorcee, tall, striking, outspoken, with more royal blood in her veins than half the House of Windsor, as she herself once pointed out. Princess Michael of Kent has always been a figure apart. But today, we're not here to judge her personality or her controversies, though, yes, there were plenty, and a few of them will come up. What I'd like to do instead is something much quieter. I want to open her jewel box. Because if you trace the path of her jewels, not just what she wore, but what she altered, what she chose, what she brought with her, you start to see a different story. Not a story of headlines and reputations, but of legacy, of history slipping through generations, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a bit of sparkle. Some of her most beautiful pieces once belonged to Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, her mother-in-law, who was Queen Elizabeth II's aunt and a granddaughter of a Russian Grand Duchess. And if you look closely, you'll find traces of that Romanov past, a pearl here, a diamond there. We'll come back to those. There are also gifts from Wallis Simpson, brooches from Queen Mary's era, reworked tiaras, necklaces turned into chokers, turned into bracelets, turned back again. This is not just a collection. It's a conversation between women across countries and decades. And at the center of it all, Princess Michael, never afraid to make a piece her own. So let's take our time. We'll start where her royal life began, with the ring. Then we'll follow the diamonds, the pearls, the emeralds, and the choices that shaped how they live today. Princess Michael's engagement ring was as unconventional and full of history as the woman who would wear it. When Prince Michael of Kent proposed, he presented Marie-Christine not with a traditional solitaire, but with a toi et moi style ring, a jewel of intimate history. A vibrant blue sapphire and a brilliant diamond sit side by side on a yellow gold band, symbolizing two souls coming together. But the real story lies within the stones themselves. They were not newly purchased, they were a legacy. The sapphire and the diamond once belonged to his mother, Princess Marina. This was the very first piece of Marina's legendary collection that Marie-Christine would wear. It was a gift not just from a fiancé, but from a family's past, a tangible link to the heritage she was about to join. In a family known for its grand single-stone rings, this two-stone design was a unique and personal choice. It was a promise not only of marriage, but of the legacy to come, the first chapter in a story of inherited jewels that would unfold for decades to come. Among the few tiaras Princess Michael has worn over the years, the festoon tiara stands out as the most recognizable. It's the one that appeared in many of her portraits, the piece she returned to for state banquets and official occasions during her most active years. But she wasn't the first to wear it, and it didn't always look the way it does now. The tiara originally belonged to Princess Marina, Duchess of Kent. Marina began wearing it in the early 1950s. We see her in official portraits and at state occasions, often pairing the tiara with her girandole earrings or the Vladimir pearl drops, which we'll come back to later. Marina wore it to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953, to the state visits of Portugal, Germany, France, even to a banquet at the Nepalese embassy. She wasn't a queen, but her jewels and the way she wore them left a lasting impression. The design itself is quite classic. Festoons of diamonds, each topped by a single pearl. It's thought the tiara may have been made around 1900, possibly by Cartier, though its exact origin is still a bit of a mystery. There's a theory it came from Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll, a daughter of Queen Victoria, but that hasn't been definitively proven. What we do know is that Princess Marina wore it frequently and passed it along to her youngest son, Prince Michael, after her death in 1968. From that point on, it became part of a new royal chapter. Now, Princess Michael didn't just inherit the piece, she changed it. At some point, the original diamond base was removed and replaced with a row of pearls. It's a small but noticeable shift. The new base softens the tiara's silhouette and ties it visually to other pieces in her collection, especially the pearl earrings and necklaces she often wears with it. It also makes the piece unmistakably hers. On the royal stage, the festoon tiara became Princess Michael's go-to choice for the grandest occasions, accompanying her to numerous state banquets throughout her most active years. We last saw this magnificent heirloom shine during the American state visit in 2019. If the festoon tiara is Princess Michael's most recognizable piece, then the Kent City of London Fringe tiara is certainly the most historic and perhaps the most traditional in design. Its story begins long before Princess Michael entered the royal circle. This was a wedding gift to Princess Marina in 1934, offered by the Lord Mayor and the City of London when she married Prince George, Duke of Kent. And for decades, it served as one of Marina's most prominent tiaras, worn on occasions of state, at coronations, and later by her daughter and granddaughter. The tiara itself is designed in the classic fringe style, a series of upright diamond bars with taller spikes at regular intervals, creating a sunray or kokoshnik effect. This silhouette was especially popular in the early 20th century, echoing Russian imperial court fashion, which Princess Marina, born a Greek princess with Romanov heritage, would have known well. In fact, there's a widely discussed theory that this very fringe tiara once belonged to Marina's grandmother, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia, better known as Grand Duchess Vladimir. That connection hasn't been conclusively proven, but the association lingers because Grand Duchess Elena Vladimirovna, Marina's mother, inherited her mother's diamonds and pearls, and was known to have owned at least one fringe tiara. If true, this would make the City of London Fringe a Romanov survivor, smuggled out of St. Petersburg after the Revolution and eventually resurfacing in London as a wedding gift to Marina. But again, we should be cautious. The provenance is intriguing but not confirmed. What we do know for certain is that Marina wore the tiara for decades. She chose it for some of the most prominent royal events of her lifetime, including the coronation of King George VI in 1937. It accompanied her to state visits, gala performances, and formal portraits, and was famously loaned to her daughter, Princess Alexandra, for her wedding day in 1963, a clear signal of its importance within the family. When Princess Marina died in 1968, the tiara passed to her youngest son, Prince Michael. A decade later, after his civil wedding to Marie Christine von Reibnitz, the future Princess Michael, the tiara appeared again, this time in Vienna, worn by the new bride at a grand ball following the ceremony. Since then, Princess Michael has worn the City of London Fringe only occasionally, especially compared to the festoon, but each time it made a statement. In the early 2000s, she wore it mounted on a velvet kokoshnik, with a diamond riviere at the base, a nod perhaps to its Russian stylistic origins. Most recently, it appeared in 2018 when she attended the Queen's Commonwealth dinner at Buckingham Palace, and in 2019, it returned to center stage, this time on the head of Lady Gabriella Windsor, Princess Michael's daughter, for her wedding at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. There's something beautifully full circle about that moment. A tiara once gifted to Princess Marina for her royal marriage, worn by her daughter, then by her daughter-in-law, and now by her granddaughter. It's a piece that travels through generations, not only in ownership, but in memory, and in that sense it continues to shine, even quietly. If the tiaras frame the royal silhouette, then the earrings often provide the finishing touch. And in the case of the diamond circle earrings, they've been doing just that for over 70 years. Each earring is composed of a single large diamond, suspended within a detachable circular frame set with smaller stones. Clean, simple, and quietly elegant, they've adapted to different eras and different wearers without ever losing relevance. They first appeared on Princess Marina in the early 1950s. At that time, she had already become a widow, and her role in the royal family was more measured. But her jewelry choices still carried weight. She sometimes wore just the central diamond drop on its own, as in her portraits by Dorothy Wilding, often paired with the festoon tiara. Later, the full circular version made appearances at major state occasions, including the Coronation Gala at Covent Garden in 1953 and the Independence celebrations in Ghana. After Marina's death in 1968, the earrings passed to her youngest son, Prince Michael. His wife, Marie Christine, wore them soon after their wedding, including at the grand ball held in Vienna following their civil ceremony. From that point on, they became one of her signature choices. What sets Princess Michael apart is how she integrated these earrings into her own distinct style. In the 1980s, she began experimenting with them, even replacing the central diamonds with sapphires on occasion. This subtle but striking change allowed them to perfectly complement other sapphire pieces in her collection, creating a bold, deco-inflected look, well-suited to formal events and evening gowns with dramatic lines. Over the years, she's alternated between versions, sometimes keeping the classic diamond drops, other times opting for the sapphires, and occasionally wearing just the central stones without the frames. We've seen them at royal weddings, state visits, official portraits, always chosen with care, always worn with intent. If some jewels whisper of Victorian history, others shout with the clean, confident glamour of the Art Deco era, and nothing embodies that spirit more than Princess Marina's Cartier sapphire clips. Made by Cartier in the 1930s, these clips, with their bold geometric forms and striking blue sapphires, were a wedding gift to Marina from her husband, Prince George. She wore them with a modern flair that was all her own, as captured in iconic portraits by Cecil Beaton. They were a masterclass in versatility, pinned symmetrically on a lapel one day, clipped to a hat the next. After they were inherited by Prince Michael, his wife began her own conversation with these jewels, but her true genius was in seeing how different pieces could work together. In the 1990s, Princess Michael had the clips adapted to serve as the clasp for a magnificent 7-strand pearl necklace. It was a stunning transformation, turning a pair of classic 1930s clips into the centerpiece of a bold, contemporary statement piece. It is perhaps the single best example of how Princess Michael didn't just wear her inheritance, she reimagined it. From a jewel that was reimagined, we turn to one that was born, deconstructed, and then reborn entirely. This is the story of the Art Deco pearl necklace, a piece with a split personality and a history of quiet rebellion. Its life began as a magnificent wedding gift from Prince George to Princess Marina in 1934, a parure of pearls and diamonds with motifs personally designed by the Duke himself. But here's the twist. Princess Marina was never photographed wearing the full necklace. Instead, she quietly deconstructed it, preferring to wear the bracelet element as a chic, fashionable choker. It was a stylish, personal choice that set a precedent for the jewel's future. When the pieces passed to Prince Michael, his wife at first followed in her mother-in-law's footsteps, wearing the elements as bracelets. But by the 1990s, she took Marina's creative impulse to a whole new level. She gathered the elements, the pearls, the Art Deco clasps from the choker and bracelets, and commissioned a spectacular new creation, a dramatic, multi-layered cascade of pearls, bold and unapologetic. It was no longer just a nod to the 1930s, it was a statement piece for the modern era. We saw it in all its glory at the Queen's Golden Wedding Anniversary in 1997, and more recently at the Albanian Royal Wedding Gala in 2016, often paired with the festoon tiara. This wasn't just wearing a jewel. This was a conversation across generations. Marina started it, but Princess Michael finished it, transforming a fragmented heirloom into one of her most powerful and personal signatures. But while Princess Michael proved herself a master of reinventing inherited jewels, she was also an architect of her own style. Not every major piece in her collection came with a royal pedigree from Princess Marina. Some were statements entirely of her own making. And none is more spectacular than her Aquamarine Suite, a magnificent necklace featuring a large, regal aquamarine set amongst delicate seed pearls, with matching earrings and a brooch. Its exact origins are a mystery. Its early 20th century style suggests it's a vintage piece, but it wasn't a Kent heirloom. This was a jewel that entered the story with Princess Michael, appearing soon after her marriage in 1978. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, it became a go-to choice for gala events. But perhaps its most stunning modern appearance was at the state banquet for the Dutch state visit in 2018. There, she paired the full aquamarine necklace and earrings with the historic Kent festoon tiara. The effect was breathtaking. It was a powerful visual statement, seamlessly blending the history she had inherited with the glamour she had chosen for herself. The Aquamarine Suite serves as a beautiful reminder that Princess Michael wasn't just a custodian of the past, she was also a creator of her own magnificent present. Let's return for a moment to that Romanov thread, the one we touched on when speaking about Princess Marina's Fringe tiara. You might remember we mentioned her grandmother, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia, a woman whose jewels became legendary, not just for their beauty, but for how they were rescued after the revolution. Some of those stones disappeared into history. Others found quiet homes in London drawing rooms. Among the pieces believed to have made that journey, a set of large, teardrop-shaped pearls. 3 of them, in fact. They were passed from Maria Pavlovna to her daughter, Grand Duchess Elena Vladimirovna, and then to Princess Marina, who turned 2 into earrings and kept the 3rd as a pendant, occasionally worn on a brooch. There's something intimate about these pearls. Marina wore them frequently, not as showpieces, but as a kind of signature. They appear in formal portraits and public appearances throughout the 1950s and 60s, often paired with the festoon tiara or her pearl bandeau. When she died in 1968, they passed to her youngest son, Prince Michael, and once again, it was his wife who brought them back into view. Princess Michael has worn the Vladimir pearls in different ways over the decades. At first, she simply followed Marina's example, using the drops as earrings, especially with her diamond and pearl tiaras. But later, she began to adapt them. In the 1980s, she experimented with pairing the pearls with diamond bow motifs, or incorporating the 3rd one into pendants and brooches. Unlike more rigid parures, these pearls gave her room to play. And perhaps that's what makes them so interesting. They're not the grandest jewels in her collection, but they're the most quietly personal, tied to 3 generations of women across empires, exiles, marriages, and new lives. Pearls are sometimes described as mourning stones or tokens of resilience. In this case, they've traveled far, not just in miles, but in meaning. Next come the diamond daisy brooches, a pair of matching floral clips with a delicate, almost modest beauty. But as with so many royal jewels, their simplicity hides a deeper story. These brooches originally belonged to Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll, the 6th child of Queen Victoria. Louise never had children of her own, so when she died in 1939, many of her personal jewels were passed to her nieces and nephews. Among the recipients was her great-niece, Princess Marina, and the diamond daisies became hers. The design is beautifully simple. Each brooch features a single daisy blossom, crafted entirely from diamonds, petals radiating from a central stone set in silver and gold. They can be worn together as a mirrored pair or separately, and they've proved surprisingly versatile across the decades. Princess Marina often wore the 2 brooches symmetrically, pinned to the straps of a gown or the lapels of a coat. But what's particularly lovely is how she made one of them even more personal, by suspending a single pearl from the bottom. That pearl, as we just discussed, was one of the three inherited from her grandmother, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna. So, in a way, the brooch became a fusion of two lines of heritage, British and Russian, Victorian and Romanov. Princess Michael has worn them consistently since the 1980s, often in mirrored placements like Marina, but she's also added her own touch. On some occasions, she's brought back the suspended pearl, echoing Marina's original styling. On others, she's kept them purely floral. They've appeared at royal banquets, official portraits, and family weddings. And while they may not draw the eye like a grand tiara, their purpose is far more profound. They serve as a quiet but powerful link, connecting Princess Michael directly to the women who came before her. They are a testament to a lineage that valued not just beauty, but the stories that jewels carry. A daisy is a modest flower, but when it's made of diamonds and passed down through 5 generations, it speaks volumes. Now we come to a piece whose journey is perhaps the most unexpected of all. Its story begins with one of the great figures of a fallen empire, the Dowager Empress Maria Feodorovna of Russia, mother of the last Tsar. But unlike the Vladimir pearls, which passed down through Princess Marina's direct Romanov line, this brooch took a surprising detour to make its way into the British vaults. Its rescuer was none other than Queen Mary, wife of King George V. An astute and passionate collector, Queen Mary acquired this brooch from the Empress's estate after her death in 1928, thereby transferring a piece of Romanov history directly into the British royal collection. It was only after Queen Mary's own death in 1953 that the brooch was passed by inheritance to her daughter-in-law, Princess Marina. After Marina's death, the jewel was inherited by her son, Prince Michael, and his wife, Princess Michael, has worn it for significant events, including the wedding of their son, Lord Frederick Windsor. This is a jewel that tells a story not of a straight dynastic line, but of survival, collecting, and the complex paths that link royal houses together. Now let's look at a piece that's easy to miss at first glance, but all the more charming once you notice it. It's a small emerald brooch, once owned by Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll, the same Louise who passed down the diamond daisy brooches. And like those, this one eventually found its way to Princess Marina, and later to Princess Michael. It's a modest piece by royal standards, a square-cut emerald surrounded by a halo of small diamonds. Not the kind of jewel that makes headlines, but one that reveals its value in how it's worn. And Princess Michael, as always, wears it thoughtfully. She's used this emerald in at least 2 distinct ways. Most often, it appears as a pendant, suspended from a strand of pearls, adding a soft splash of color to an otherwise monochrome look. But at other times, it's been worn as a clasp or a fastening, placed at the center of a choker, or pinned high on the neckline, holding fabric or strands together. Perhaps no other jewel in the collection carries such a weight of personal history as this one. This is Princess Marina's Cartier flower brooch, and it's not just any flower, but a specific one, a pansy expertly rendered in diamonds, sapphires, and emeralds. But its beauty is shadowed by a poignant story. This was the last gift Prince George ever gave to Princess Marina, presented to her to mark the birth of their 3rd child, Prince Michael, in 1942. Tragically, just a few weeks later, the Duke was killed in a wartime plane crash. Understandably, Marina wore this brooch only a couple of times in the following decades. It was a beautiful but painful reminder of her great loss. New life was breathed into it by her son's wife, Princess Michael, who has worn it both traditionally and as the centerpiece of a striking necklace. It is a testament to how a jewel can hold immense beauty and deep sorrow, and how a new generation can honor that past while creating a new future for it. And then there's the Cherries brooch, small, whimsical, and with a history that connects 2 of the 20th century's most talked about royal women. This playful cluster of ruby red cherries once belonged to Wallis Simpson, the Duchess of Windsor, the woman for whom King Edward VIII gave up the throne. And its journey into Princess Michael's collection is no mystery at all. According to records, It was a direct wedding gift from the Duchess of Windsor herself, presented to Princess Michael when she and the prince were on their honeymoon in Paris in 1978. The image is striking. One controversial duchess, living in exile, passing a personal token to another who was just beginning her own complex journey within the royal family. A small, sweet brooch carrying a very complicated legacy. And so, we close the jewel box of Princess Michael of Kent. What we find inside is so much more than just a collection of precious stones. It is a story of survival, of Romanov pearls that escaped a revolution. It's a story of love, of a final, poignant gift from a husband lost too soon. And above all, it's a story of identity. In a world that often tried to define her, Princess Michael used her jewels to define herself. She was not merely a keeper of heirlooms, she was their co-author, unafraid to add a new chapter, to change the setting, to make history her own. Whether you call her controversial or captivating, one thing is certain. She taught us that true style isn't just about wearing the crown. It's about having the courage to make it fit. And now, this legacy is poised for a new chapter. With Prince and Princess Michael having retired from public duties, the question of the collection's future hangs in the air. Royal watchers around the world now look to the next generation of Kent women, perhaps to her daughter, Lady Gabriella, or to her stylish daughter-in-law, Lady Frederick Windsor, wondering which of them will be the first to inherit not just these magnificent heirlooms, but the very spirit with which they were worn. I would love to know what you think. Do you have a favorite piece from Princess Michael's incredible collection? And what are your thoughts on her bold, hands-on approach to royal style? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the Kent Vault. If you enjoyed exploring these royal treasures, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps, and it ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another fascinating royal collection.